everyone, it's time for another Hitchcock review, and today we're going to take a look at his first talking picture, 1929's Blackmail, in which Annie Andra stars as Alice, a young woman who kills a man in self-defense after he tries to assault her. Mature themes notwithstanding, this is a relatively simple, straightforward story adapted from a hit play by Charles Bennett. Though it kicks off with a fast-paced police procedural prologue, once it introduces its heroine, we stay with her for pretty much the rest of the film, following her through this harrowing ordeal. I like this movie well enough. It's a good movie, it's got a couple very good sequences. It is a bit rough in patches, and it can feel slow and kind of tedious, and there is one element I find frustrating, which I'll get to. But at the same time, it's a thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Of course, it's a creative and stimulating film. He went on to achieve much greater things, but if he had stopped here, this wouldn't be a final work to be ashamed of. Visually, it has some standout shots, like early on the wanted man in bed spotting the reflection of the police in the mirror, or the neat sequence where the artist leads Alice up several flights of stairs to his studio. The cinematographer here was Jack E. Cox, who worked with Hitchcock on nearly a dozen films, the last being The Lady Vanishes in 1938. Blackmail has historical significance, not just as Hitchcock's first sound film, but as Britain's first sound film. But to call it a talkie isn't entirely accurate. They were part-way through filming when the order came down to make it a talking picture instead of a silent one, which is why several sequences have no dialogue and no sound added, except for some car horns and other effects. And when I say the scenes don't have any dialogue, you can see people talking, but you don't hear them. Czech star Annie Andra was already a veteran of silent films on the continent. She worked on just a handful of English productions. Right before Blackmail, she starred in Hitchcock's The Manxman, a depressing romance, but not a bad movie, about a girl caught in a love triangle with a fisherman and a lawyer. Originally, when she was cast for Blackmail, it didn't matter that she had a heavy accent, because nobody was going to hear her talk. But once it was changed into a sound picture, or a pseudo-sound picture, her voice suddenly had to be taken into consideration. Online you can watch a brief sound test that Hitchcock did with Andra. It's a bit naughty, Hitchcock telling a dirty joke to make her laugh. Typical Hitchcock. The audio is furry, but Andra is easy enough to understand. But ultimately her accent was deemed too thick, so her lines were dubbed by British actress Joan Barry, who a couple years later starred in Hitchcock's bizarre romantic adventure Rich and Strange, also known as East of Shanghai. Supposedly, Joan Barry dubbed Annie Andra in real time. Andra was being filmed, mouthing her lines, while Barry spoke them simultaneously just off screen. If that's true, then they kinda had a Singin' in the Rain situation going on. Watching the film, it's not obvious to me that Andra has been dubbed, but one can't help wondering if the character may have come across any differently with her own voice. I can't say I love how Barry sounds. She says the lines with a baby voice croak, kind of like the Britney Spears baby voice, but old-timey and with a British accent. As for Annie Andra's own performance, it's standard silent film style acting. She's fine, with the exception of a few awkward close-ups. She also spends an extraordinary amount of time on camera dressing and undressing, which feels voyeuristic. It is thematic and it has a point, but sometimes it feels a little gratuitous, you know? I do think her performance improves and feels more natural as the film goes on, but I also find myself having more sympathy for the character as her circumstances change. Most of Hitchcock's popular films feature a likable, sympathetic protagonist with whom the audience can identify on some level. A thriller can be more effective if the viewers are able to put themselves in the hero's shoes and personally relate to the stress he's going through. Alice is indeed sympathetic, but in the first part of the film, I don't find her particularly likable or relatable. My first impression is that she's kind of a sourpuss. She's annoyed that her policeman boyfriend has kept her waiting, annoyed that they can't get a table at the exclusive restaurant, annoyed with his manners. Everything he does is wrong, and then she starts waffling about going to the movies with him. Okay, so she's in a bad mood, so she's being kind of a pill. I get it, I get bad moods, I can be kind of a pill myself sometimes. The thing is, that's not the whole story. We find out she's on the lookout for another guy, an artist, who asked her to meet him at this same restaurant. They see each other and she gets all coy and come hither, but is like, not right now, not right now. And then she squabbles with her boyfriend until he leaves in a huff. The other guy immediately takes his spot and she leaves with him happy as a clam. So she's not being a nice girl. She's cheating. And doing it in a pretty stupid, obvious way. We're never told where she met this guy or how well she knows him. It seems she doesn't know him very well, though, and initially she refuses to go up to his apartment. But he doesn't take no for an answer, and after he begs and cajoles, she gives in. This is where things get prickly, because regardless of all the confidence she exhibited going into this, apparently it was never her intention to do anything with him. Despite all the flirting, the changing clothes, the flouncing around in the tutu dress, asking him to fasten the back, letting him fuss with the straps, despite giving him what appears to be a runway of green lights, when he suddenly grabs her and kisses her, she's shocked and pushes him away. No, get off, I don't want that. Her behavior is full of mixed signals. I don't know if it's even fair to call them mixed signals, because a mixed signal is something... When you're giving mixed signals, you're saying, oh yeah, I want this, no, I don't want this, yes, no, and it's confusing. But this is like she didn't even have a clue what she was doing. It's like she didn't know how men are wired and the way one thing leads to another, which I find it hard to believe because this is 1929, it's the Roaring Twenties. People knew about stuff, you know? But it's like she was going along and having fun and trusting that he was of the same mindset that she was, and then all of a sudden he reveals that he was not on the same wavelength, and she realizes, whoa, I don't want to be with you. I would rather not cheat on my boyfriend after all. And that's where the mixed signal comes in. And really, Blackmail is a cautionary tale. If you send mixed signals, you better beware, because you never know how the person on the receiving end will react. Now let me make something clear. I am not saying that because Alice was foolish or naive, she was asking for trouble. I am not saying that because she acted promiscuously, she deserved to be attacked. Sexual assault and rape is a terrible and horrific thing, no matter who the victim is, or what they were wearing, or what they were doing beforehand. There are some folks out there who like to say when a woman is attacked that it must be because she was doing something provocative, and I can tell you that is absolutely not true. What's frustrating in this case, though, is that again and again, Alice did show through actions and words that she was interested. So I can see why he thought she was on board. The problem is that when she made it clear where she really stood, and it doesn't matter if that's where she stood at the beginning of the night or just suddenly came upon her, he decided to force himself on her anyway. And that's when the situation turns scary. They were being playful, and he seemed like a nice enough guy, albeit pushy and overeager and the type of person who tries to get a girl to ditch her boyfriend. But that niceness was only skin deep. He quickly takes advantage of her compromised position, stealing her dress and taunting her with it. He forces her to step out of hiding in her undergarments and take the dress from him directly, but just before she is able to do that, he hurls it across the room. And within seconds, it changes from an unfortunate misunderstanding to a very bad, very dangerous scenario. This is the scene, the major scene in the movie, the focal point, the part everyone remembers. The struggle is artfully and tastefully depicted in shadows on the wall, followed by the violent movement of the bed curtains as she screams and tries to fight him off. Luckily for her, he keeps a chunk of cheese and a large knife next to his bed, because you never know when you're gonna get a craving for cheese at 3 in the morning. Am I mistaken? Is it bread? Anyway, she gets the knife, the struggle subsides, his arm falls limp, and Alice, now in a state of shock, backs away. From this point on, she's like a different person. She's subdued, her movements are jerky, almost robotic, as she gets her bearings, and throughout the rest of the film, she's a haunted creature. When she sees the painting of the jester that seems to point his finger in accusation, she destroys the canvas. But no matter where she goes, she can't get away from reminders of what just happened. Then Hitchcock sends us through the roof with this jump scare of a jump cut. Couldn't do that in a silent movie. Another scene where Hitchcock toys with sound comes when Alice is listening to a customer who won't shut up about how un-British the murder was, and her monologue turns into a drone in which the only distinguishable word is knife, repeated over and over until she shouts it and Alice jumps. This is also, by design or by accident, one of the few moments of levity in the film, another being Hitchcock's cameo, where he's sitting on a bus being pestered by a little boy who pulls his hat down. I also enjoy the little bits with the landlady. She's another fun side character. While the story moves on to the titular blackmail and the fear of exposure, I found myself less interested in that than in the psychological aftermath for Alice. Remember, her trauma is twofold: the horror of the assault and the horror of stabbing a man to death. Either event on its own would leave her shaken, so even when the plot is resolved, you're left with the feeling that she'll be haunted by this for the rest of her life. Along with Annie Andra, the film stars John Longden as her policeman boyfriend, and Cyril Ritchard as the artist. He sings a bit in the movie, and I was fascinated to discover that Cyril Ritchard is most fondly remembered for his Tony Award-winning performance as Captain Hook opposite Mary Martin in the legendary 1955 Broadway and later filmed-for-TV production of Peter Pan. Editing Weaselberry here, I just watched some clips of his performance as Captain Hook, and he is great. So much fun. I added links to the videos in the description. Also, it was nice to spot character actress Sarah Allgood playing Alice's mother. She was in a ton of stuff in the 30s and 40s, so it was fun to recognize her here. This movie has been streaming on the Criterion channel for a while. It will be leaving at the end of this month. I checked it out there, and the quality is top-notch. But it did occur to me that maybe the picture was too clean and crisp. The visual effects in the opening look a trifle wonky, and I don't remember feeling that way when I watched it years ago on a cheap DVD in a cathode ray tube television set. By the way, if you had that $5 bargain bin box set of 50 Hitchcock movies, you might recognize the music that plays over the main titles of Blackmail is the same music that loops over the menu on those DVDs. Oh, I have not-so-fond memories of hearing that song over and over. It used to drive me crazy. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Blackmail. It's not a favorite, but it's a very good film, and I think it's worth seeing at least once, especially if you are a fan of Alfred Hitchcock movies. Like I said, it's on Criterion for the next few days, but you can also find it on YouTube. If you have seen it, please go ahead and share your thoughts on it in the comments below, and I will see you next week. I'm thinking of doing a review in honor of the late Roger Corman, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye! I've had a few questions about this guy, so I'll give you a close-up. I don't know what he is. He's an alien, he's a monster, he's a very lovely, bright green, Kelly green color. Doesn't show up quite right on camera here. But yeah, he's very fun to play with. He's squishy. I like tugging on his tongue or these little antennae things here. And when you smash it like this, it lights up. It's a little more red in person, but you get the idea. My brother found this for me somewhere, I don't know, Dollar Tree or something. And yeah, that's what it is.